Well, good morning. I'm going to try to go over all the aspects of selling timber from the beginning to the very end. And first of all, on the first step to take when you have some timber to sell, I recommend, and most the Forestry Commission and other foresters recommend, to get consulting foresters to help you with the sale, or else ACF foresters, Association of Consulting Foresters, all over the state and the United States, to let them help you sell the timber. It ends a lot of frustration, worry once the sale is started, inspections of the sale when it's being done and carried out. Just to give you an example of how that would have paid off, last month I was called by an attorney here in town. We work here in town. We're located here. And a landowner about a month ago, or no, 2 years ago, had shown a man his timber that he wanted to sell. The man said, okay, well, the landowner had about 150 acres. He showed him like 60 acres that he wanted to sell. Well, 2 weeks later, that same man came back with another man who was the owner of the company, and he gave him a contract, and he paid him a lump sum for the timber. Well, on the contract, the man didn't read it, and it had his whole 160 acres of land on the contract. He didn't read the legal description. He didn't understand the legal description. But he knew he'd already shown that other man 2 weeks before the area that he wanted to sell. Well, that's still in limbo. I'm not going to say anything more about it, but that would have saved a lot of problems. It's been going back and forth for over a year, and it's not settled yet. But that would have stopped, if it was a good contract, if it was handled properly, all that wouldn't have happened. And they went out there and started cutting the timber. The landowner saw they were cutting a lot more than they were supposed to. He stopped them, and of course that caused a problem. So it just needs, all these things could have been eliminated if it was handled correctly. But a lot of people do sell their timber, and they have problems with it. But by having a consulting forester or somebody knowledgeable of forestry, of knowing what you're selling, when it should be sold, how it's to be sold, and so forth. I'm going to go over all the steps that we take as a business to sell timber starting from scratch on it. First of all, you need to have develop a management plan for your land to know what tracts should be sold at what times, what needs to be thinned, what needs to be clear cut and replanted, or what stands are not very productive, where you need to put, new species in there maybe to get a better growth cycle. You want to enhance the wildlife in some areas possibly. All this can be in a management plan when it's set up to know when to thin it or to clear cut these stands and to replant them. Hardwood and pine sites, hardwood sites and pine sites, both, need to be managed. You want to find the highest and best use for that timber and for that land and maximize the growth on your land. That's the main purpose of managing the land. It's not just to go out there and cut it when you want to, but determine when that timber is mature, when it's financially mature, not when it's physically mature, but financially mature when it should be cut. Because it's like anything else. It grows fast at first, and then as it gets 50 and 60 years old, it's like a person. You might gain some weight, but you don't gain much in size. So the timber's the same way. So you need to determine when it needs to be thinned and when it needs to be sold. On pre-harvest planting, let's say you want to decide to cut this tract over here, tract A. On the pre-harvest planting, just to be sure there's no misunderstandings when you're getting ready to sell the tract. You want to mark the boundary lines of the sale. If this man had marked the boundary lines of that sale, that would have stopped a lot of problems. We'll physically go in and mark the boundary lines. You might have creeks as a line, roads, exterior boundary lines, or whatever. It could be the sale line. You need to determine where your streamside management zones are, how wide they're going to be, how far back you're going to go with how up in the hills, not in the hills, but where the drains come down. How far you want to, and that needs to be a marked area too. So there's no questions asked like, where's the SMZ in here? Well, what we do, we physically go out and we'll GPS and mark the SMZs to be sure there's no mistake made, to be sure it's done right. Most loggers today know what SMZs are, but it depends on how much they paid for that timber, if they're coming out close or not, or if they're going to make some more money as far as how close they'll go to those streams. And we're very cautious with streams. Topo maps are very useful. on determining the sale area, the SMZ sizes, and length of the SMZs. And if you should have to cross streams, you need to look ahead of time to see where would be the best place. You try not to cross streams at all. You try to go around them. Some circumstances, there's no choice but to cross a stream. And you want to minimize the damage on that. And we follow the Alabama BMPs, Best Management Practices. Very seldom, maybe 3% of the time, 5% of the time, maybe have to cross a narrow stream. I don't mean a lake, a major creek or anything, but just minor streams. And you need to also determine on pre-harvest planning where the roads are going to be. You should already have some roads in there, but additional roads might have to be built. A logger usually doesn't like for his skidder to, with fuel prices and so forth today, doesn't like for his skidder to have to go close to a quarter of a mile. If he can go less than that, it's much faster production and it's less on fuel. So they'd rather do their loading grounds to more areas than they used to. And all that can be determined ahead of time. Next thing you want to do is determine the selling method. There's two main ways of selling timber. It's a lump sum sealed bid, where we know ahead of time what the volume is on that tract and what it should bring, and we'll advertise it as a lump sum sale. We'll inventory it or cruise it, what I call cruising, most of you would know what that is, of timber. And then the buyer, he will go in there and he'll cruise it. And he'll determine what his products are and what value he'll put on it. That's one way of selling it, lump sum sealed bid. The next is a per ton sale. We use per ton sales. I don't like them on large tracts. You lose control. The seller loses control. The forester loses control in a way, a little, on a per ton sale. Per ton, though, is good in certain circumstances where it's damaged timber, tornado damaged timber, where it's a first thinning of a pine plantation, a second thinning, and also where it might be removing some pulpwood under a larger stand of timber. It has to be sold on a per ton sale, a per ton pricing structure. In the pricing structure on the per ton, you need to set up in the prospectus and also in the contract, what is he calling pine pulpwood, pine cannon what size timber is it? What size is the bottom diameter? How far to the top does it go? And what size is the length of the timber? Sometimes they have a minimum length of 26 feet or something. You've also got to know on the per ton price which products. We list the products. Even though there might not be any hardwood, let's say it's a pine thinning, a pine plantation thinning, there won't be much hardwood. There could be a little bit of hardwood that's grown up in the stand, so we'll include hardwood pulpwood on the bid sheet. So if you should get a load, it's covered already in the contract. But you need to have specifications and the price by products. Okay, in the prospectus, what we do when we advertise either lump sum or per ton sale, we'll send out prospectuses to 30 to 40 to 50 buyers, potential buyers. Not all of them are going to bid, not all of them are going to look at it. But we used to get like maybe 10 to 12 bids 5 years ago. Today, if you get 2, 3, 4, or 5 bids, you're doing well. We sold a big tract the other day, about 2 weeks ago. We only got 4 bids, but it was a lump sum sale, a very big tract. And it brought what we wanted, brought a good bit over what we wanted. And the other 3, out of the 4 bids, 3 were under our estimate of what we thought it should bring, and the other one was a good bit over the estimate. So a lump sum sealed bid on big tracts of timber. I say big tracts, could be 60 acres and over. It depends. It depends on the quality of the timber on the tract. It could even be smaller. But a per ton sale, I like it because it's up to the buyer then to do his own merchandising. It's hard to go out there on a per ton sale, and if you see something that's being missed, even a forester, and I've done it for 43 years, it's hard to correct. You can't sit out there every load and tell that man what to put that log in and what to put that log, what pile to put it in. You know, is it canner wood, is it chipping saw, or is it pulpwood? So you've got to depend some on the logger on the per ton sale. Okay, let's go to the contracts. Once you've sold it, you got a high bid, either per ton or lump sum. with John Doe Timber Company. Okay, you'll write the contract. And there's several things that need to be in that contract to stop problems. You need to have the legal description of the area that you're selling. We include a map also with that same contract showing physically where the track lies, where the boundary lines are on the track, and we try to describe it in the legal description of what we're selling. So there's no questions about what he's got the right to cut. You want to mark the boundaries. We mark the boundary, you don't have to, but we mark the boundaries with paint. We will physically go around the GPS unit and mark the boundary lines with paint, so there's no questions asked. This is a line, either along the SMC, along the exterior boundary line, or whatever. We mark it, so there's no questions. On the payment, you need to specify in there about the payment. This can really get complicated, but due to time, I'm not going to go into everything, but on the payment of the timber, on the per ton sale, you want to be paid weekly. You want to get a copy of the tickets of the truck, of the mills, the mill tickets where the wood was delivered. You want to get the settlement sheet from the company where they pay you for the 50 loads they haul that week, let's say. And also what we require that the logger, the man in the woods loading out, has to keep a written inventory of each load that leaves the woods. He has to say who the driver was, what day it was, what truck it was, what number of the load. We require them to number the loads of the truck, so we can keep up. If we should go in there to audit to be sure.
Yes. The loader operator, is he the one that keeps that inventory in the woods?
Most of the time it is the loader operator, the man that's in the loader. Most of the time. Sometimes it'll be on the truck seat and the drivers do it. But I like for the loader man to do it, but the trucks do it. But they keep up, and they're required to send that sheet in weekly also with that. So you got three things, and we audited all three sheets. A sheet that the logger kept in the woods, the sheet that the ticket that the mills gave to that truck driver, they're turned in, and also the settlement sheet that the buyer of the wood pays for. Now on a lump sum sale, I feel like you would know this, on a lump sum sale where you get a bid for all your timber, let's say for $100,000, you're paid in the beginning for that. You don't have to worry about that money. That money should be in your hand before a stick of wood is cut. So you're paid up front for that timber. Also, you should have damage clauses in the contract. The damage clause, if they destroy, let's say you're leaving certain trees. If they damage the wood that's left in there, if they tear up the roads, the skid trails are bad, where they're rutting out and so forth, we require a performance deposit. That's to cover the problems where they have on damaging at the end, if they don't go back and fix the skid trails, the loading grounds, the roads, the creeks. If there's any problem, you shouldn't have any problem with the creeks, but in case there is a problem, all that's fixed before they leave the sale, or they have to come back very shortly, like within a month to correct it. We have penalties if they cut the wrong trees. If we mark the timber or something, and we're selling just this number of trees, we're selling 10,000 trees. And for some reason, they go in there and they accidentally or on purpose, cut some additional trees, we can go in there and check this, and we have a penalty of about 4 times to 5 times what that tree is worth. But we very seldom have a problem with that. We just don't have a problem with that. Because we know we're out there checking the sale too while it's being cut to be sure that the wrong trees are not cut. In SMZs, that's not a problem now. They usually don't go into SMZs. I've had a problem years ago when they started out with streamside management zone areas of cutting some additional trees. But we haven't had that. And they know we're tough, we're strong. You got to stand up for what's right. On the BMPs, that's in our contract, that they're to follow BMPs on the roads, on skid trails, on drainages, anything to do with the land as far as leaving it in good quality shape. And while they're working, to be sure it's left that way. It's not erodable. We also have a clause in there about litter. That's not a problem now like it used to be. When I started out years ago, loggers left cans, food boxes, cold drink bottles, everything.
Skidder tires.
Everything on the land. And then the break-in period was about 15 years ago. It took a little time to train people, but we still have that clause in our contract about litter, and there's no litter left on the land to speak of, nothing at all. Maybe a plastic bottle back in the woods somewhere, but not anything like it used to be. So it's much better. Landowners like it, I like it, so it's a good thing to have that in your contract about litter. On logging debris that's left, usually they'll bring the trees up to the loading ground. Do you want them to leave the tops around the loading ground in piles, or you want them scattered out? I ask them to scatter them back out and throughout the woods. Just when the skidder goes back out, he grapple some tops and take them with me. Just drop them in scattered places around the land. That way, when we get ready, if we do a burn, it's burned up and it's gone. If you have a big pile, you have a very hot fire there, and the litter, you can't plant that area, usually. If you're planting pine, you'll have a high layer of ash and duff, and your pines won't grow in that spot. So I require them to, it's in our contract, that the tops are scattered back out in the woods. They don't top them in the woods like they used to. You don't have a man with a saw like you used to, topping it out in the woods. That would leave it. Today they bring them all in, they top them there at the loading ground, and then the skidders have to carry the tops back out. We audit our logging, all of our jobs, I say all of them, 95% of them. We go out there every week at random and check on them to be sure they're cutting what they've got, and they know where it is, where the lines are. They haven't gone on the lines. The SMCs are in good shape, and so forth. So I think that's very important. We require insurance of all the loggers. Some people don't require this. We won't work with somebody unless they're insured. In the last 2 years, I hate to say it, but we've been involved with logging, not physically, but loggers working on tracks that we have sold have had automobile accidents, truck accidents, and have killed people. A log truck came up on a car, didn't realize the car was stopped in the road, he was loaded, he couldn't stop fast enough. So we require automobile liability, which is truck liability, automobile liability on all the trucks out there. We require general liability in case anything else happens, a tree falls on somebody, a tree swings around with a loader and hits somebody. We also require workman's comp, that the buyer has that. And we get copies of all of these insurances before they start. We get copies that the insurance is current. Occasionally we'll get where the insurance had expired and the man didn't pay again for it. So we won't let them go out there. And workman's comp, as you know, is for the man on the job out in the woods. Be sure he's covered, you're not going to be sued. Something extra that we do, most people don't do, we require that we're insured and the landowner is additionally insured on all of our sales. That's something that we do. On paying severance tax. Severance tax is what the state collects from timber being cut. It's different prices for pine saw timber, hardwood saw timber, pine pulpwood, hardwood pulpwood. We require that the buyer pays the severance tax. And we also say that the contract, when we sell to company A, that they cannot assign that timber to anybody else. They cannot resell it. We don't want that. We want them to be the ones to buy it and cut it and be responsible for it. We've had a problem like that years ago. We stopped that because the buyer has to have the responsibility because the contract's with him. We want to be sure he's gotten everything done. On the harvested, when the inspections are done and the payments come in, we go out in the woods and check the loads. When we're out there, be sure the loads have been written down, be sure what truck just left the woods, be sure it's written down, and we watch, and they don't know if we're out there watching or not, for 2 hours to see what loads leave the woods. It's hard to keep up with every load. You can't sit out there and watch every load. That's not possible to keep up with. And then at the end of the sale, when all this is done and closed out, we'll go close out the sale, we'll go out there and make a final inspection while the logger's still there to be sure everything is done. Trash is picked up, roads are repaired. I love angled water bars on the roads, where anywhere it goes down a hill. To put in, I want those roads to last for years. Probably 60% of the people will do it right, and the other 40 have to get it back on. I let them go back and do them again. They just don't do them. They do them fast and in a hurry to get out of here. And it's cheaper. Well, I want them done right. So we follow. It's in our contract to follow the BMP booklet outline, and it shows how to do it right. And then we'll get a written release for the landowner, for our landowner. We'll send a closeout to the company that bought the timber and get a written release from the buyer that he's through with all the timber and land, so to say, and the timber reverts back to the landowner. And from there, other things can be done. I covered a lot of things here, but it's all the things that are necessary in selling timber to be sure you're covered and through with it, and get it done correctly and no problems. We'll have problems occasionally, but I can't think of anything right now major, because we try to correct it with penalties and so forth. And we don't want to keep their money. We want to do it right. We want to go, and they'll go back. If you hold a $4,000 or $5,000 bond, performance deposit, performance bond, and you want them to go back and fix the roads, or you have the right to use their money to fix, it's not to keep that money, it's to use that money to fix those roads. I had a problem one time in 35, 37 years. We had to use the money. But otherwise, they'll go back and fix it. They won't keep putting you off. They won't put us off. Any questions?